It's 2005. The internet was still trying to find its footing, and MySpace was the undisputed king of the digital world. It was a time when the internet felt like a messy, unregulated playground, full of untapped potential, but also rife with chaos. And MySpace, well, it wasn't just a social platform, it was the place to be. Like, profiles were as loud as they were creative, and users had total control to make their pages as unique as possible. Auto-playing songs that set the vibe, glittery backgrounds that screamed individuality, maybe even a custom cursor or a slick JavaScript effect to impress your friends. It was basically a wild west of self-expression, a place where the boundaries between creativity and chaos blurred. And you could also quite literally be whoever or whatever you wanted. But sometimes that freedom came with consequences. And if there was a beating heart to this chaos, a place where personalities clashed and flourished, it was definitely MySpace. Like, imagine logging in and being greeted by an explosion of glitter graphics, blinking text, and auto-playing emo tracks. Literally, each profile was a wild, unique manifestation of someone's identity. It was basically a playground of self-expression where people agonized over the perfect background image, the quirkiest profile song, and the ultimate top 8 list. A small but deeply meaningful grid of your closest friends or frenemies. You know? Friends, enemies, rivals. Anyway, but not everyone was swept up in this glitter-drenched frenzy. While millions obsessed over whether their profile conveyed in the right mood or if their friend lists reflected their real-world loyalties, one teenager had a different obsession. His eyes weren't on the flashy surface, but on the machinery underneath, the gears, levers, and pulleys that made MySpace tick. He was less concerned with how the platform looked and more with how it worked. And his name is Samy Kamkar. At just 19 years old, wasn't a typical MySpace user. So he wasn't spending his nights debating which dashboard confessional lyric captured his heartbreak or perfecting the placement of his profile pic. Instead, he was a self-taught coder with a brain wired for puzzles and a relentless curiosity that refused to be contained. While others saw MySpace as a digital diary or a social hub, Samy saw it as a sandbox for experimentation, a sprawling canvas of code just begging to be understood and tested. He was driven by a question that most people never thought to ask. What happens if I push this? Not in a metaphorical, philosophical sense, but in a literal lines of code sense. He wanted to know how far MySpace framework could be stretched, how its functions could be reimagined, and most importantly, how he could make it do something it wasn't designed to do. Samy's curiosity was just pure and playful. It was not to destroy it, but to understand it. He spent hours probing MySpace architecture, asked where are the cracks in this perfect system. And one night, his curiosity ignited an idea that would soon spread across the internet like wildfire. But before we dive into how Samy's worm broke the internet, think about this. Do you believe that too much freedom online is dangerous, or is it the perfect playground for creativity? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let's continue. So, to understand Samy's idea, you need to know about MySpace Top 8. If MySpace profiles were digital kingdoms, then the top 8 was your royal court. 8 loyal friends, carefully curated and displayed for the world to see. Being in someone's top 8 was a statement of closeness, loyalty, and status. Friendships were forged and fractured over this seemingly innocent feature. The top 8 was where alliances were made and where grudges simmered. For many, getting onto someone else's top 8 was the ultimate validation. But Samy didn't want to wait for that validation. He didn't want to compete for a spot, so his brain had conjured up a radical question. What if I didn't have to wait? What if I could make myself appear in everyone's top 8 automatically? It was a wild idea for sure, a rebellious, mischievous thought that only a mind like Samy's could produce. Not to show off or to flex his skills, but simply because the possibility just existed. And for Samy, the mere existence of a possibility was an invitation to explore, test, and see what would happen. So he dove into his code like a detective unraveling a mystery. He spent hours and hours, maybe even days, writing, rewriting, testing, and breaking things. His room, no doubt dimly lit by the soft glow of his monitor, was filled with the quiet hum of his computer and the click-clack of relentless typing. And finally, after untold hours of trial and error, Samy cracked the puzzle. He wrote a piece of JavaScript so elegant and simple that it was almost absurd. The script was ingenious. If anyone visited his profile, the code would infect their profile and add Samy to their top 8. But that wasn't the true brilliance. The real stroke of genius was making the code self-replicating so that once someone was infected, their profile would spread the code to anyone who visited them. Samy had just basically created a digital virus, a worm, a piece of code that would ripple across the MySpace universe with unstoppable momentum. But at that moment, in the quiet stillness of his room, Samy had no idea that this little experiment was about to make him internet famous. So, when Samy closed his eyes at night, he thought his little experiment was just that, a harmless bit of fun. A challenge accepted and completed. But when he woke up, the whole world of MySpace had erupted. What started as a spark of curiosity had exploded into a digital inferno. His name and the cheeky self-proclaimed title, Samy is my hero, was now plastered across over 1 million profiles. Like, imagine opening your eyes to find that you, a teenager with a few lines of clever code, had become the most infamous name on the hottest social platform on the planet.
When I released The Worm, I woke up in the morning and I had 200 friends. At that point, I was kind of scared. A few hours later, when it reached 2,000, I was really scared. Just only another few hours later, it reached 200,000. I realized I was never going to do anything bad again. So I took what freedom I had left and I went to Chipotle and got a burrito. I came home and it was at 1 million.
To some, it was hilarious. A joke so perfectly executed that they couldn't help but laugh. But to others, it was an infuriating intrusion. Friend lists were hijacked, profiles altered, and the secret's top 8 had been compromised. And while users debated whether Samy was a genius or a menace, one group wasn't laughing at all. The MySpace engineers. The platform was in chaos. The MySpace servers, usually handling the everyday buzz of teenager updating their profiles, now buckled under the strain of the worm's relentless spread. Every second brought more infected profiles, more strain, and more panic. The term going viral hadn't even entered mainstream lexicon yet, but that's precisely what was happening. Samy's code was multiplying with the unstoppable momentum of a runaway train, and the tracks were starting to splinter. For MySpace team, the situation was nothing short of a digital crisis. The virus' rapid spread had sent shockwaves through the platform and the urgency was palpable. It was a full-blown code red. There was no time for hesitation. Engineers were thrust into action, working around the clock to shut down parts of the platform and prevent further damage. Systems were hastily dismantled and parts of the network were temporarily taken offline to stem the tide of the worm. The very nature of social media, instant connectivity and viral content meant that once the worm had taken hold, the damage was far-reaching and rapid. The engineer's primary task was to close the backdoor Samy had created, fixing the vulnerabilities that he exploited to spread the worm. But this wasn't just about patching holes in the code. It was about containing the fallout from a rogue digital virus that was both an embarrassing failure for MySpace and a wake-up call for the entire tech world. The frantic rush to contain the damage was palpable, but despite their best efforts, it was clear that the damage had already been done. The viral spread of the worm was something that could not be undone, and the chaos left in its wake would be felt for a long time. And so Samy's profile was swiftly and permanently banned, a symbolic but necessary move to remove the culprit's digital presence from the platform. His profile, once a beacon of viral rebellion, was scrubbed from MySpace entirely. But even with its removal, MySpace damage control didn't end there. The scale of the worm's impact didn't go unnoticed by those outside the tech world. What had started as a prank or curiosity-driven experiment had escalated into a major security breach, and it attracted the attention of authorities who were far less entertained by Samy's antics. The FBI, no strangers to cybercrime, quickly became involved, bringing a legal weight that Samy likely hadn't anticipated at all. The situation, once trivial in his eyes, had now spiraled into a matter of serious legal consequences. And so, for Samy, a 19-year-old with big dreams and even bigger potential, the reality was jarring. What began as an innocent act of digital mischief had turned into a criminal case with far-reaching consequences. He now found himself facing probation, heavy fines, and a lifetime ban from the very platform he had once played with so freely. The authorities weren't interested in the viral fame the worm had earned him. They were focused on the potential threat to the digital infrastructure, the trust that had been shattered, and the legal violations at hand. Amidst the wreckage of Samy's online presence and the chaos on MySpace, a deeper revelation was emerging. The internet, once thought to be an anarchy, if a teenager could collapse a social giant with a few lines of code, what did that mean for the future of the internet? The message was loud and clear. Digital security couldn't be an afterthought. The internet, for all its innovation, was still a delicate, fragile system. A single spark of curiosity could ignite a blaze that no one was prepared to handle. And MySpace scrambled to learn that lesson. They restricted the type of code users could enter, fortified their defenses, and patched up the cracks. But trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. For many users, the worm had exposed MySpace as a house of cards, a place where one wrong move could bring the whole structure down. And the aftershocks of the MySpace worm weren't confined to a single platform. It quickly became clear that the event had sent ripples through the entire digital landscape. Social networks like Facebook and Twitter, the current X, which were growing rapidly at the time, took notice. The carefree, unrestricted freedom that users had once enjoyed, the so-called digital Wild West, was beginning to fade. What had once been a playground for self-expression and experimentation now faced the growing need for regulation and control. The MySpace worm had exposed a massive vulnerability, and the era of open, unchecked creativity was drawing to a close. The digital landscape was shifting. Security, once an afterthought, became the new frontier. Platforms across the internet began urgently reassessing their defenses, fortifying their walls, to ensure that something like Samy's worm couldn't ever happen again. New systems, firewalls, and more sophisticated security protocols were put into place to guard against the next wave of digital threats. But the consequences were broader than just better security measures. They marked the beginning of a new era for the internet. What had been a wild west of online freedom was evolving into a more structured, controlled space. The MySpace worm hadn't just caused a problem for one platform, it had sparked a paradigm shift for the entire digital world. The days of carefree exploration and limitless online autonomy were over. Digital security was no longer a footnote to the conversation. It was now the headline. Every platform, every digital service had to think about how to safeguard their users and their systems from the ever-growing threat of digital chaos. And you might expect a story like this to end in ruin for its protagonist, Samy. A lifetime ban, FBI attention, and the label of the internet troublemaker could have been the end of Samy's journey. But here's the thing, instead of retreating into the shadows or turning to the dark side of hacking, Samy found a way to use his talents for good. He became an ethical hacker, a white-hat security expert. The same curiosity that drove him to explore MySpace code now fuels his mission to protect companies and individuals from threats. Samy started consulting, speaking at conferences, and teaching others how to secure their digital worlds. His name, once synonymous with digital mayhem, now stands for digital defense. Samy turned his punishment into a purpose. He became a big figure in this cybersecurity scene, helping to make the internet a safer place for all of us. The MySpace worm left a lasting legacy. It taught an internet community an essential lesson. With great power comes great responsibility. Samy's experiment revealed how quickly things could spiral out of control and emphasized the importance of security, caution, and foresight. For Samy, the worm was a turning point, the catalyst that transformed him into a cybersecurity hero. And for the internet, It marked the start of a new chapter where security and creativity must coexist in balance. So what do you think? Is the MySpace worm a cautionary tale about too much freedom or a testament to the power of curiosity? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed this dive into internet history, please don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe for more. And join us next time here at Thinkers Arcade. Thanks for hanging out, and may we meet again somewhere in the depths of YouTube.